Stood by my girlfriend through a mental health crisis for over a year. In return, she slept with another guy. Around a year ago, a guy went after my girlfriend as she was leaving work. Thankfully, her life was spared, but her assailant did threaten her with a weapon and intimately abused her. The store where she worked at, security cameras in the parking lot, and combined with footage from a bank across the street, the PRP's car was caught on video. Using the video and DNA evidence, the purpose caught and arrested the next day. The evidence was so compelling that he pleaded guilty to avoid the maximum sentence. Due to the aggravating circumstances surrounding his crime, such as the use of a weapon, the judge handed him a 20-year sentence. With good behavior, he might be out in approximately 10 years. The important takeaway is that her attacker no longer poses a threat. She doesn't need to worry about him for at least a decade. Clearly and understandably, this event was highly traumatic for her. Although I wasn't directly victimized, I also experienced severe trauma. My bouts of depression stem from the guilt of not being able to protect her, coupled with the knowledge that someone else hurt her. In the immediate aftermath of the incident, she did not want to see me. As painful as it was, I understood. Her parents picked her up from the hospital, and for a week I heard nothing from her. Eventually, her sister contacted me, explaining that my girlfriend was staying with her parents and would call me in a few days. However, she never called. Instead, I received a message from her sister asking me to visit. I was met at the door by her mother, who laid out a set of rules for my behavior and conversation. She also insisted that I not initiate any physical contact. While the conversation was uncomfortable and the environment was cold, I knew they were trying to protect her during her recovery. As I walked in, I found her seated on a chair, her father standing next to her, and her sister on the couch. Her sister explained that my girlfriend wanted me to know she was okay, despite her trauma. My girlfriend didn't utter a word, nor did she look at me directly. Shortly after this encounter, I started researching ways to support survivors and what I could expect from the healing process. My girlfriend began therapy, attending 2 sessions a week initially, before scaling back to once weekly after 2 months. Around this time, she reached out to me and asked to meet at a coffee shop. I arrived to find her heavily medicated, barely showing any emotion. Her speech was measured and monotone. She told me that we couldn't see each other romantically until she had worked through some issues. This wasn't surprising, as we hadn't spoken privately in the months since the attack. I reassured her that I would be there for her no matter what she needed. As I started to tell her I loved her, she interrupted me, explaining she didn't want to hear that, got up and left. Over the next month and a half, we exchanged a few texts, and I suggested meeting for dinner. After some hesitation and a discussion with her therapist, she agreed. However, the dinner felt cold. She reacted sharply when I asked her how she was doing, snapping at me not to ask personal questions. Once the meal was over, she quickly left without any conversation. Our relationship progressed slowly. We began meeting once a week for lunch, and she started opening up more. Things seemed to be moving in the right direction, until one day she didn't show up for our lunch. I called her parents to make sure she was okay, only to be told not to expect to hear from her for a while. 2 weeks later, I reached out to her sister, who revealed that my girlfriend had asked her family not to let me contact her. This news left me devastated, and soon after, my girlfriend asked me to meet her at her therapist office. When I arrived at the therapist office, I was brought into a room and saw my girlfriend sitting emotionless and avoiding eye contact. The therapist began the meeting by listing a series of do's and don'ts. After she was done, my girlfriend broke down into tears, after which my girlfriend confessed that she cheated on me with a man from her new job.